Donald Trump's cowardly litigation tactics against the BBC will be backfiring in Donald Trump's face. Yes, a Trump-appointed judge in the Southern District of Florida, Judge Altman, just granted Donald Trump's request to amend the lawsuit against BBC when the deadline to amend was actually back in March. But even Judge Altman, who seems to be a little bit of a Trump bootlicking sycophantic federal judge, even he says, I'm going to let you amend the complaint, but if you're trying to squirm out of your obligations in discovery to produce financial records where you're still claiming $10 billion of reputational damage, I'm just going to warn you, you're going to have to justify that 10 billion number. I understand that part of your amendment is removing the so-called business losses from the various Trump entities. So now you're saying that discovery into those areas should not be allowed because you're just claiming $10 billion in reputational damage. But even Judge Altman is saying that's a lot of money in reputational damage. And one would assume that there's a nexus between what you're alleging is reputation and business loss, because how could you be claiming reputational damage where you eventually went on to win the presidency? And that's unfortunate for all of us. So you may still have to produce these financial documents. Now, Donald Trump, the coward that he is, the guy who snuck out of the old Air Force One in Turkey through a catering container and then tried to cover it up. He does those weak, pathetic tactics in litigation. So right as he was being called out for not turning over the financial documents, what Donald Trump does to try to squirm out of the obligations to actually, I don't know, litigate his case, he goes, aha, I just discovered something new in the litigation, that now we need to amend the complaint, thus not producing the records that have been requested of the Trump financial documents. Well, what is it? Trump says, we've just learned that on YouTube, there were 34 clicks of the BBC documentary from Panorama that may have been traced to Florida. So literally 34 clicks. Yeah. So by the time you're watching this video, the idea of 34 clicks on a YouTube video, that's what Donald Trump is claiming $10 billion in reputational harm. But that's why he's saying, I just discovered new information. So in order to amend the lawsuit, he couldn't just say, well, now I need to amend it after the deadline because I don't want to produce financial records, because that was something that would have been known to him once he blew the deadline back in March. But what he's doing now to try to avoid producing the financial records when he claims a 10 billion loss is he's saying the new information that we just discovered in this case, because the BBC fulfilled their discovery obligations and turned over records, we found 34 clicks of this BBC documentary in Florida. That's why we have to allege a new jurisdictional hook. And we're also going to remove the allegations in the amended complaint about business loss, so we don't have to produce business records. And then the federal judge, who is a Trump-appointed judge, is saying, I'm not going to let you amend the complaint because you are removing the business loss claim and you want to avoid discovery, but because you're claiming that you've now learned 34 people clicked on this YouTube video regarding this documentary about the insurrection, and you're suing the BBC claiming that they defamed Trump by editing the video in a way that linked him to encouraging the insurrection, and you're saying that defamed you. And because the BBC motion to dismiss is significantly rooted in a jurisdictional claim that the court doesn't have jurisdiction over the BBC, a British broadcasting channel, we'll let you amend it to add these facts about these 34 clicks that occurred in Florida. I want to bring in Harry Litman from the Talking Feds YouTube channel and Talking Feds Substack. And Harry, there's also a mismanagement of this case, frankly, by the federal judge, because the federal judge, who was a young, fairly inexperienced federal judge, he's been on the bench for a while, but he was appointed when he was like 34 or 35 or whatever. He allowed discovery to take place the way it did. He didn't stay the discovery. And then the deadlines expired. And then he allowed the BBC to turn over their documents, let Trump basically delay it. Then Trump is now using 34 clicks in Florida as some Florida jurisdictional hook about being defamed in that forum to begin with. But then ultimately, where all this leads is, okay, he amends the complaint. It's like Trump's strategy in the Strait of Hormuz, which is no strategy at all. I'm just going to low key it. I'm going to semi-negotiate it. I'm just whatevs. This is not how people litigate cases who feel they've been legitimately damaged. And one of my big issues with Trump and how he litigates and how he behaves just as a thing is this behavior is just weak and pathetic. It's just being done to harass. We all know that. But it just shows a total weakness. If you feel that you've been defamed and you want to go through court, produce your documents, fight it out, do a trial, let's go. But this behavior is so much like somebody who would be hiding in a cargo cafeteria container and sneaking out of Air Force. It's weak stuff. It's pathetic. And I want to get your take on it.
It's pathetic. It's also deeply cynical, and I think just has to undermine public confidence in the whole legal system. It's so clear. It's got nothing to do with the actual cause of action. It's trying to use the legal system as a cudgel to just score either political or personal kind of vindictive points. And the everything else is sort of an afterthought. And then, as we know, he'll fold up if it looks as if he actually has to himself do what litigants need to do, like pony up and face depositions. Just start with this. $10 billion, right? That he loves that. We can remember that from the settlement fund in the IRS case that was worth exactly zero, was meritless, but he puts this figure in. That's not supposed to be a joke. Now, why would it be that you have this whole theory of business losses where BBC has made the bottom line of all these Trump companies literally drained of billions of dollars, and oops, never mind 100%, because everyone knows it, judge knows it, BBC knows it. I don't want to have to give you this information, but I'll do a whole different theory, and it just so happens it's the exact amount that, it's 10 billion now in reputation. That's virtually a Rule 11. That's an arcane, that's the rule for like when you're not completely honest and substantiate the things you're saying. But it's just a number that he throws around. It's the legal system supposed to redress real harms and actually decide what's happened and who's right. And he uses it for anything but that. And now, of course, as president, and with the great cushion of the immunity opinion that lets him do anything with the Department of Justice, he does the same thing with the criminal law. We're not really going to try to convict these guys, but man, are they going to suffer, and are they going to be sorry they weren't nice to me? That's no legal system is supposed to be that way. And to the extent the courts countenance it, because you have certain liberal, literally liberal, like expansive rules in the system. So, because you try to have people, not be caught for traps for the unwary. But Trump is anything but unwary. He just uses these traps to try to make trouble. And then at the end of the day, like the Trump University case, like others, he's just, never mind. It's so totally, it's kind of a abusive root and branch. Now let's go to this guy. He's a Trump appointee. You're right that he said he does say 10 billion in reputation. How are you going to get there and show me that if you were just any other person who didn't have this kind of net worth? 10 billion in reputation, it would be even more of a joke. So you're going to have to come up with some information. That's, of course, what Trump was trying to avoid doing. So good for him. But basically what he's done is permit an amended complaint 7 months after the deadline had run on amended complaints. And, really rules is rules. But it seems like he also, telegraphs to the public there are rules, and then there's Donald Trump rules. So the whole thing is cynical, exploitive, and just really like down and dirty. He's not gonna win this case. He hopes to make trouble. And if it comes to a point where he's not going to succeed, he'll just dismiss and go on to another venue. But literally, it's a matter of total indifference. Lawyers, even less scrupulous ones, will think hard. Can I get away with saying this? Can I get away with saying that? Doesn't factor into his thinking at all. I'll say any old shit I feel like, and in some sense, every case he does. Almost every motion he makes is just an abuse on the court, a kind of, pushing on some wild-eyed theory or proffering of facts that don't hold up. He is a single-handed wrecking ball for the credibility of the federal courts. And don't think people don't notice. Those who love him, those who hate him, understand he thinks he can play by his own rules in the justice system.
So if you're BBC, let's be very clear. You're now being sued in a $10 billion lawsuit. The executives have to speak to these lawyers on a day-to-day basis. They're participating in good faith because the rules apply to them. They've turned over 90,000 documents. It's very stressful to be involved in a litigation, to be sued, to have to participate in all of this, even if it feels like it's a sham one, especially the fact that it's coming from someone who's the president of the United States. We should add that. While BBC is fighting, it is painful and it is messy. And they know that when you litigate with this animal, this monster, this psycho, that this is how he's going to behave. I found these 3 things, Judge. And most people would have the self-dignity as a litigant to not even go through these things. But Trump doesn't care. And so when you think about the paradigm of, okay, well, Ben, why do some people settle with him? Why do people just give in? Why do they just say whatever? It's because they've sometimes make a conclusion. And this is what Trump is counting on, that you're not going to behave like the BBC in litigation, or that you're not going to behave like Iran in the war. He wants a litigant that behaved like Venezuela. Could Venezuela have fought back? Could they have have an insurgency? Sure. But Trump was shocked that you had an Iran who was like, no, F that. We're going to fight you into the death. And it's hurt Iran. It's harmed them. It's not been easy for them. But when they've stood up to him, you can see that Trump's not equipped. He does the same type of shenanigans and the schemes and the games and this and that. And where has it resulted in? Our interceptors are gone. Our weapons are gone. The morale on the ships is done. Think about that as similar to kind of the litigation where we are here now. We're going through our own litigation Strait of Hormuz right now, where we have this quagmire. Trump got this amendment, which they treat as a win in the Trump world. But it's like all you've delayed was your loss. And not only are you losing in that court, but you've now lost in courts across the country where people have monitored your behavior. Think about that writ large with our alliances. People say, okay, you look weak and pathetic and we can't trust you. So it's actually remarkably similar, this pathology of a loser that has this bravado and bluster, but when it hits a wall, it fails. And it scrambles and it does things that most humans would never. Harry, I could never file a document the way right. Donald Trump. Like I would feel shame. I'd go home. I would tell my client I'm not going to file it. Like I can't do that. Like I have to put my name on it. They don't care. That's a thing. They don't care. I'll give you the final word.
Yeah, look, it's worse than that. First, let me say litigation Strait of Hormuz. There's a nice turn of phrase. Look, the even more trenchant example is the law firms and the media centers. He won a few of those suits, and they were settlements where any lawyer doing the straight calculus would say, he's full of shit. He'll never collect a penny. And why did he collect many, many, many pennies? Because they understood that he was corrupt in office and would do what he could to make their lives miserable, completely disavowing his oath, completely just, using the government as a kind of, retribution machine for Donald Trump personally. Those are the ones who said, yeah, I know it's total. We'll win on the merits, but he will use his powers corruptly and make us hurt. Even so, even those decisions have been poor decisions. I think really good. Some of the Meidas Mighty, I'm sure, have read, as the Fed has the long expose by Michael Schmidt about Paul Weiss. Really a shameful story, but a law firm that decided to, play footsie with the devil. But that's how he's won even some of his cases, which are almost without exception, just meritless and efforts to try to browbeat and cow and just bluster until they're not, when he says, oops, never mind. I've got to go back now home in this big container.
Everybody subscribe to Harry Litman's YouTube channel. It's called Talking Feds. So when this video ends on YouTube, search Talking Feds. Tell Harry I say hello in one of the videos. You can even put WTF America in it, which is the name of the new book with my brothers that we wrote that comes out October. But go make sure you subscribe to Harry's YouTube channel. They do great work over there, and it's where I get a lot of my legal news from. Thanks, Harry.
Thank you, Ben.
Breaking news right now. My brothers and I wrote a book. It's called WTF America. And well, doesn't that just say it all? It comes out officially this October, but you can pre-order your copy today. Just scan the QR code or click the link in the description below.